Why is networking so important? The more genuine connections you make, the more potential for personal and business growth. This means more opportunities to build your business by leading with a giving mindset. Effective networking can be a win-win when you do it the right way, but it's not always easy. I'm here to help you get the most out of your networking efforts so you too can always be connecting. What's up, everyone? This is Raghu Sundara, and you're watching Real Talk with Raghu. Welcome back for another great episode. It's the show where I turn coffee meetups into a real live podcast and have conversations to learn about people's stories, what makes them tick, and why they do things, and what motivates them to get up and work hard every day for their community and their dreams. So today, I have the pleasure of bringing on my show my great friend, Dr. Michelle Morkert.
Hey.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
We've only known each other for not even a year yet.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So we met in the Schaumburg area at a networking event last year, and had so many great conversations with you. I still remember the first one. And I really want to get into, what you do. So, why don't you talk about what you do as a profession?
Yeah.
Your intro.
Yeah, thanks. So, I'm a women's leadership coach and strategist. I say I'm the coach for trailblazing women, and I know we're going to talk about what that means in a little bit. But, I really think about women out there who are working really hard. They want to make a difference in the world, right? And yet they're exhausted and they're lonely and they're still really nervous, even though they have this track record of success. And every time I see an amazing woman doing something really hard, I think to myself, well, she's got a community around her, because she can't do it by herself. Nobody can do it by themselves. We all need somebody. And so I love to walk beside them. I'm their partner, And so, yes, I care about her family and I care about her job, but I care about her. She's my primary concern, right? So she tells me what her goals are, and then we work together to make those things happen. And all of the women that I work with, they are trailblazers. They are doing things that other people haven't done. And that's really... it's this idea, honestly, of why is it so hard to do these hard things? Because people haven't done them before. You're probably the first one, right?
Yeah.
So no wonder it's hard. And I think we all need a team, and I love to be a part of their team. And it's really just, the best job. I love it.
That is, and it truly shows. I remember we met that networking event. I believe it was Engaging Speakers.
It was.
Last year.
Yeah.
And shout out to Engaging Speakers. They do a great job. The Schaumburg chapter, Gail Brown, she is dynamic. And it was so great when we met. And I don't think I've ever met somebody like you with a story like yours. And it just really, I think that when you said women's leadership coach, you were talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think you even said belonging. You said DEIB, and I'm thinking, what does that B stand for? And so that what really made me think, hey, we should definitely meet up for coffee. We met up, found out more about you and what makes you tick and why you do what you do. But speaking of stories, why don't we tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah.
And before Dr. Michelle, when it was just Michelle.
Okay. Yes, before Dr. Michelle. That's funny. Yeah, because I asked you, I'm like, what part of my story do you want me to tell? So I put it this way. You've heard me say this. I was raised, I grew up around corn, cows, and conservative churches in rural Illinois.
Wow.
That's how and where I was raised.
Yeah.
My whole family lived there. And that was, that was it. We didn't really go out of this town that much, not really. And the big thing about this community for me was that we were raised and taught repeatedly as adults in all these spaces that there were certain things that women did and certain things that men did. And not only was it just the expectation, but there was some issues of like right and wrong. Like you had to do this the right way. And so there was just a lot of pressure, right? And the thing is, I was raised by a single mom, and I'm an only child. So that meant there were 2 females in this family. And so if we followed those rules, like only half the stuff would get done.
Wow. Yeah. That's an interesting way to think about it, but it's very true.
Right?
Right? Yeah.
So I saw us as different, than other people. But what I have really come to understand was it was when I gained what I think to be my superpower, really, is to be able to look at people and see like how their beliefs come out of what people have told them, what they can do, or only as far as they can go, right? Like staying in their lanes. And I really care about women being able to reach their full potential. And so it was seeing the way that these lessons were taught over and over and over and over again, and seeing how we never fit those lessons that made me wonder. I just developed like an analytical skill. That's really what it was. And I will say, my mother got her GED. So she finished high school with the test, and my father, he died suddenly when I was 2, so I didn't really know him, but he graduated from high school. So, they didn't go on to college. And so for me, it was a really weird thing to be a first-generation student. I went to get my BA, and I wanted, actually, I don't think you know this. I don't think we talked about this. I wanted to go to Washington State.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. To this really specific school. And I wanted to do political science, or I wanted to be a lawyer, right?
Wow.
It was a no-go in my family. And so what I did was I went to a university not too far away, and I became a high school English teacher.
Okay.
Do you know that about me? That was like before Dr. Michelle.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, in the same town where I was raised.
Yeah. What was that like?
Oh, well, I love teaching.
Okay.
I love teaching. I still do, very much. But I was always teaching, like women's literature, or I was always teaching like African American literature. And so I was still looking for the other voices that we just weren't hearing that I knew was out there. And so then I decided, I had a child, and I decided, okay, I'm going to go on for my master's, which was like a really big stretch, because I didn't know anything about this. And I just kept thinking more and more about gender and like global stuff, human rights. I was just so drawn to it. And at that time, I was also working at a domestic violence shelter. And so it was in that time that, I'll just tell this very quick story, that the shelter moved from a house in a neighborhood, so like a confidential location, to this very public, big, huge mansion, beautiful mansion, big windows everywhere. Everybody knew all about this, right? So it was no longer a secure location. Like it just wasn't safe. And yeah. So I remember working the weekends and overnights, and I was also pregnant with my second child at this time. And I can remember that sometimes abusers would come to the door.
It's crazy.
Because they knew where it was, right? Yeah. Everybody knew where it was. And I can remember being there on a weekend, and my friend Carmen, who was like the house manager, and I were there, and we could see on the camera somebody was coming up, usually a man, he was coming to the door. I'm like, Carmen, get your phone. I got to go outside. And we would have to confront them.
Wow. And
so I remember we went out, and it wasn't bulletproof glass, or anything like that. It was just regular glass. But there was this entryway that had double doors, and I'd go out the first door, and it would lock behind me. So then I was kind of like in this glass cage, right? And Carmen was standing there with a phone just in case something happened, and I had a phone just in case something happened. And then I went out the next door, and it would lock behind me. And I would tell this person, I'm like, I can't confirm or deny that the person you're looking for is here, and you do need to leave.
Wow.
You need to leave the property, otherwise we're going to call the police. And they'd be like, well, wait, I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I can't confirm or deny, and you have to leave. And I can remember those moments, when the person was so shocked, and I thought, gender is still really at play here. This person maybe hasn't been told no before, and I'm standing up to this person, but I'm doing it for not just the women in the facility, but I just kind of felt like, whoa. There's something like gender theory in action, right now. And so it was like I was learning these things in my master's program, and I was doing them. I was working, and it was like coming to life in front of me. And I will say that my professors in my master's program were the ones who told me that women's and gender studies existed. I didn't know it was a thing. I had no idea. And they're like, hey, you should get a PhD. I'm like, people like me don't get PhDs. My people don't do that.
Your people.
It was like, we don't, I mean,
Yeah.
we don't do that.
Wow.
I didn't know how to do it.
So what drove you to that? You didn't have to.
No.
You didn't have to do any of this.
No, I didn't. But I loved it. It was like, I was like, wow, this is the thing.
Yeah.
This is the thing I love. This is the thing I could study forever. I could write about it forever. So I did this sort of mini self-sabotage, though, when I applied for my doc program, because I only applied to one. It was the one I really wanted, but I only applied to one. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to get in. Like, there's no way I'm getting in. And then I got a full ride. And so then I called my spouse up, who's amazing, and was a teacher, and I'm like, I just got a letter in the mail that said I got accepted to Clark in Massachusetts, right? So here's me in Illinois. And the first thing he said was, so we're moving. I'm like, yeah, I guess we are moving. So we moved.
That's pretty amazing.
That was pre-Dr. Michelle.
Pre-Dr. Michelle.
Yeah. So that's it. You got it. That's the story.
That is so cool. One of the things that stuck out to me the first time we met was just, I think, me putting a stereotype in my head about when you talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then you brought in the B word, the belonging.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking anytime I ever hear that, it's usually somebody who does not look like you that
right.
brings that up.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's usually somebody probably looks like me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wait a minute, you're talking about DEIB,
Mm-hmm.
but you're a white woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you flip the narrative when people are asking these questions, or even with yourself? Do you ever think about that aspect of
Yeah, I do.
what you're doing?
Yeah, I definitely do. So I think of myself as taking an anti-racist stance. That's really important for me, that it's like combating racism. It's not just like equality, but I'm really trying to break down the barriers. And I have a responsibility as a white woman to do that, but also I have a race. Just like you have a gender, right? Because I think so many people think, oh, women's and gender studies, it must be all women or only women that care about that. No. Gender is like the equalizer, it includes all of us. We all have a gender. We all have a race. So like as soon as we start having that conversation, we start to break down all sorts of like power barriers and erasing the power and think we're only talking about that group over there. And so it's really important for me to be thinking about my role in all of this and the kinds of opportunities that I have to really call out racism, for example, not just sexism, but, ageism, all the things, right? It's all, interconnected. And I just think being on this planet, we can make the world better for everybody, and there's enough to go around. Like, I don't have to compete with other people, we could work together and we could collaborate. And I so believe that when we collaborate, we make something brand new possible that was never possible before. And we break down some of these old systems with a lot of loving disruption. And that's what I'm all about.
I love that, loving disruption. And you always talk about disrupting and being a disruptor. And you talk about, when you talk about women's leadership, leadership, I think women's leadership, what you're talking about, that could be translated to leadership skills for anybody.
Yeah.
So why would you focus on just women's leadership when it comes to your profession and what you do for humanity?
Yeah, no, that's the best question. I love it when people ask that. Like, am I discriminating against, some people, right, or excluding them? And I just think we all have, a calling, a gift, a talent, right? And so based on my lived experience, I've seen some things, right, about what it looks like to exclude women. And I just see it from, my perspective, but I also see the data that shows that, while women are graduating right now in the United States at higher rates from bachelor's degrees than men, they're still not in those leadership positions. They're still not making the kind of, the same money, for example, right? And so there's a pattern there that just isn't actually fair. It isn't equal. And so I want to get people in the room who are qualified and who want to be there, and I want to make a difference in that way. And I think making this change is one of many, and so that's my lane.
Totally. The trailblazing, you mentioned it.
Yeah.
I think you're getting the shirts, and I get one of them, hopefully.
You're going to get one of the first ones. Yeah.
Trailblazer, not the Portland Trailblazer, but Trailblazer, as far as Dr. Michelle, staples it. And so I can't wait to get it. Where did that start, and when did it start?
Yeah. So this is a story, too, about a coach that I had who, when I was trying to figure out what she calls the core genius, and I'll mention Jen Loving is her name, and I did some public speaking training with her, but she talks about your core genius, and it's really a gift that she has. She's so good at it. And we were trying to think of the way to describe the people I want to work with. Because I want to work with people who want to make a difference in the world. You know, I look at these women who are like the firsts to do something. I love them. I mean, I am like the biggest fan of these people. You know, I'm like, how did they do it? How did they get that idea? It's never been done before. Like, I get so excited about it. And then I think, think about the women who are doing this publicly. Like, a lot of our failures are private.
Yeah.
Wow, think of the public failures, right? Like, how hard that is. And so I think, how do I describe these women who want to make a social impact, who want to make the world a better place? And Jen and I sat there together and we came up with this concept of trailblazer. And it just encompasses it, right? Because you hear trailblazer.
Yeah.
Like, well, what do you think?
Pioneer, first to do something, paving the way for others, opening doors for others, even when a door is opened for you. And so that's what I think of.
Yeah. I think of fire, like it feels fiery, you know? And I think you have to have some of that, right? To be able to have the tenacity, that's another word, right? Totally. To shatter the glass ceiling. Like, how many times do you hit it with your head before you shatter the ceiling and you have like a headache the whole time, right? Totally. I mean, it's a really hard thing to do. They're going first.
Yep.
And they're making a way for others. And so Trailblazer, it just fits. And honestly, I had to grow into it, though. I had to grow into it for myself, because I believe coaches go first.
Yep.
And if I'm not willing to do it, I'm not going to encourage my clients to do it. So I go first. And has it been a journey for me to really embrace like my own trailblazing with confidence, because I still have my own limiting beliefs. I still have my own inner critic. All, the things I was raised with, they still like rattle around in there and they come up. And so now I think to myself, what does a trailblazer do? Oh, yeah, a trailblazer speaks. Oh, yeah, a trailblazer, plays, right? Is creative, it has fun, likes to laugh. I love to laugh, right? Yep. A trailblazer loves an adventure. A trailblazer's serious. A trailblazer's loyal. A trailblazer partners. A trailblazer's serious about community and making a difference, all those things. And so now I've really just, I'm so grateful to Jen for that gift of helping me figure out what a trailblazer is, because now I see myself in that way, and I help my clients to see that too in themselves.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And givers, I always talk about giving.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd when it comes to giving, and it's give and take. But I think a lot of times trailblazers are the ones who give first. You have to give. You have to constantly be giving. You have to constantly be opening doors for people, because somebody has to start the conversation. Somebody has to take the first step and lead the way. Yeah. And so I think leaders are trailblazers as well. And so, and speaking of leaders, did you ever have, or do you have a mentor? Did you have a mentor growing up, and do you have a mentor now?
Yeah, you and I talked a little bit about this. I'll say, I don't think you have to know your mentor. Otherwise, some of us are in big trouble.
Yep. Yeah.
Then what are we going to do?
You're right.
Like, we're stuck,
You're right.
So it's so important to know, I say this a lot, upon whose shoulders you stand, who's gone before you, and then you can be the shoulders for the next people, coming along. I think I have a lot of different ones. I wrote a newsletter article about my Aunt Dorothy the other day, and she was a trailblazer for me in her own way. My doctoral mentor, Dr. Cynthia Enlow, she was a mentor for me in terms of writing and speaking. And I have this story because, we used to present, well, I still do, but we used to present at conferences pretty hardcore when we were getting our PhDs, right? Because we were writing and presenting and publishing, and it was just the whole academic route. And so we'd walk into these conferences, and usually we were in the women's caucus, which was like in the Hilton on the 7th floor, down around the corner past all the room service trays, like on the floor. I'm like, are you kidding me? And wow. We never got like the grand ballrooms and things like this. And so I can remember we would get really nervous because we didn't feel like we belonged.
Yeah.
That's part of DEIB, right? We didn't feel like we belonged in the space, and there weren't a lot like us. She was one of the very first to get into the field of women's and gender studies. It's why I went to Clark University, was to work with her. And if you look at Cynthia, she always looks the same. Always. She is small, and she's a force. And she's got this short, gray hair, glasses, wears tennis shoes, khaki pants, and like some oversized button-down shirt, maybe a turtleneck underneath it. She always looks the same way, no matter where she goes, and her integrity, which is one of my core values, is always on display. And so I can remember we were sitting in this hotel restaurant getting ready for our presentations, and we're all wearing our suits, right? Because we're getting ready to do a presentation, and there's Cynthia. And we're like, okay. But it's Cynthia. She can do that, right? She's written 13 books. I mean, everybody knows her. She flies all around the world. She's, famous. And so we're like helping each other and getting ready, and she just said, you need to be who you are. That's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten. And that was like 20 years ago. She's like, be who you are. And I didn't even fully grasp what that meant. And now as I'm growing into my own identity as a trailblazer, I know that that's who I am. Yeah. And so I don't have to perform for anybody, because I'm not being myself. And the only thing I can do on this planet is be me. It's the only thing that's perfect. Perfectionism doesn't exist, but the only thing I can do really well is be me, even if that's me messing up, if that's me it's me learning and being messy along the way. It's the only thing I can do, and it's the best piece of advice I ever got.
I see you. That's so true. I see you in so many different lights, different events, in different front of different groups of people, and you are always the same.
Oh,
you're the same person.
Thank
so
you.
I think you are who you are, and you're being that person, and you're always genuine. And I think that's what makes you also a trailblazer, because you don't change how you act around different people. You're the same person, and that's so genuine. That's so great, and I think that's why people are attracted to you, and what your vibes are as far as even leadership and so on. So
Thank you.
So powerful. Keep that up.
I appreciate that coming from you, because I think you're really authentic too. You're always saying the same message.
Yeah. Thank you.
Not in a boring way.
Oh,
in
yeah,
a good way.
totally.
In a good way. Yeah.
So I want to go back to you said self-sabotage back there.
Oh,
like,
yeah. I'm like
your
the
story.
queen.
Yeah, you're the queen.
Uh-huh.
Is that because you always talk to me about this? You always
Uh-oh.
talk about inner critic.
Oh, yeah.
And you always talk about like naming
I do.
your inner critic.
Yeah.
And I was like wondering like why. Number one, why? But also, self-sabotage did you have a name for your inner critic when you self-sabotage yourself?
That's a really good question. Yeah. So I think about the inner critic in this way. It's our safety instinct. Every human being has one. It's the way we're designed. We watch out for danger. We avoid rejection. We avoid failure. We just want to stay safe. That's totally normal. It serves us well. It keeps us alive. But that voice of that, safety instinct, like, finds danger when we're about to speak up in a meeting. Finds danger in doing a podcast. Finds danger in, like giving a big presentation like you've done before, or writing a book, or saying what you want. Really, honestly, being true and saying your truth, right? Asking for a raise or advocating for yourself, saying no to somebody. And so once we understand that it's just trying to help us, that's the reframe. So it's reframe, rename, and reclaim. Okay. So that's the reframe. It's not there to hurt us. There's nothing wrong with us. Everybody has one. So you don't need to be fixed. You're fine. It's operating the way it's supposed to. Then the second piece then is to rename it from like inner critic or like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Give it a name. So silly, but there's a lot of science behind why we do this, and you give it the name that comes to you. So I've had people give it all sorts of different names, like just a name of a person that they don't know. Somebody like Tiffany was
Sure.
somebody's. Oh, I talked to somebody today. You know what hers was? Thanos.
Oh, okay.
No, really good example because she's kind of small and petite, right? And Thanos is like a giant, and that's how she feels about her inner critic, that it's a giant and it wants to do the right thing, like the character Thanos, but it's way off track. It's like way off track, right? And it's harsh. And so we're like, all right, so it's Thanos. Now, so that's the rename. So now when she feels it, we're like, that's Thanos. That's what that is. It's not your prefrontal cortex. It's not your goal, right? It's not your planning version of you. It's the like hide from and avoid fear. So we separate it out from us. Thanos is now over here and I'm over here. So I don't feel like it's truth. It's not driving my, actions, right? I feel it. I'm not trying to get rid of it. I don't want to fight against myself. It can just be set aside. So then the third part then is to reclaim. And that is to notice that it's going to show up when you're doing something scary. So if you're a trailblazer, you live life doing scary things. So of course it's going to be there. So you say to yourself, this is the time when the inner critic shows up. Of course you're here.
Yeah.
It's a sign that I'm maybe on the right path. It's a sign I'm doing the hard thing.
So it's actually a good thing to have the inner critic.
Oh, I mean, it's painful, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know what? If you're not rocking the boat, it's not going to show up.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty content.
Makes sense.
But if you rock the boat on a regular basis, you can expect it to be there, like
Totally.
on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
So let's reframe it in that way, rename it, and then we reclaim it.
Wow. So it is Women's History Month.
Yes, it is.
And so are you doing anything special this month as far as your coaching, or what does Women's History Month mean to you? Either both questions.
I love Women's History Month and International Women's Day, which we had earlier in the month. I see it as not somebody's giving us a month. I hear this a lot. Like, I hate Women's History Month because it's the only time people talk about women. I would counter that and say it's an opportunity for us to start talking about conversations about women in history, that we've never talked about. It's a time for us to like pay attention, and then we just keep going.
Yeah.
So I love it, and for me, it's just a huge celebration of all the people who've paved the way for me, because I benefit from so many people, and I don't know all of them, and I want to know more and more about the impact, And then it's also a really interesting time for people to think about where we've been and where we are now. And I'll just give you like one really quick snippet. That like when we talk about the wage gap, for example, which is the difference between what men and women make for, the same job, right? And I'm just going to make it very basic, men and women, but we can never talk about men and women without also thinking about the gender spectrum and how people identify, but also race and ethnicity and age and all these other pieces, right? They're all parts of our identity. So when we say men and women for the wage gap, we're talking about white men and white women, because white women make more than black men. They make more than Latinos. Okay, so like I have to really, if we're saying like men and women, we have to really like make sure we understand who we're talking about here.
Sure.
Because African American women like make about 10 cents less than white women, and Latinas make about 10 cents less than black women. So there's a lot going on with the wage gap, but to simplify it, right now we're at about 82 cents for every dollar. Okay, so that means if we're equals in the workplace, you would make the dollar and I would make 82 cents. All right. Now, 40 years ago in the 1980s, it was 80 cents. That's 2 cents difference, Raghu, in 40 years.
Sorry, I dropped my pen. That's disgusting.
So you feel disgusted, so now what? It's 2023, it's Women's History Month. We could like be sad about it for a month, or we could get educated about it and then keep going. So for me, it's just like relaunching us to like speed up, to get going, to work together, to collaborate. You think it's disgusting, I think it's disgusting. What can we do together to make a difference? Well, we can talk about it. That's one thing. We can educate.
Sure.
And then we can help people figure out what agency they have in their spheres of influence to make that change. And as a male, you could be an ally. Just like how we were talking before. Like, I'm a white woman and talking about DEIB. I can be an ally in spaces.
Yeah.
I have a responsibility, you know, to do some things.
I agree. I think
point that out.
You don't have to have something in common to fight for them excelling.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I love Women's History Month, because people are a little bit more interested than usual. But I think now we just have to keep the conversation going because we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That is, I mean, I still can't get around the 2 cents difference.
Well, I can break it down more,
in
Raghu.
that amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, yes, 40 years. But when we take a look at the statistics, and I just looked at the Pew Research Center's data on this, that when men and women start out in the workplace, it's almost equal. It's like in the 90s, like 98 cents. So it's still not equal, but it's close to equal, right? Then by like 35 to 45 and 45 to 55, it drops down into the 80 cents area. And like, I'm like, okay, you know, maybe women are dropping out of the workforce to have children. We don't always have some of the best policies on family leave for people in this country. But I thought, and I have a PhD in this stuff, right? I thought, okay, so now once we get to the like 60-year-old range, it's going to be equal. It drops again to 78 cents.
Wow.
So in the 55 to 65 range, it drops again. So we really need to make change early on in people's careers, in their work trajectory, because it doesn't even out.
That is crazy. And like we could be here for another 3 hours talking about this. That does lead me to another question. I always talk about networking and always be connecting and all that other stuff, and we talk about that. In my presentation called Always Be Connecting, I've always had the do's and don'ts of networking. And one of the slides you know where I'm going with this now, because I've talked about this and asked you about this. I always wanted to have a slide up there, the don'ts slides of misogyny and males making women feeling uncomfortable or dismissing them, or I can go on and on. What's your approach to when you work with women for leadership coaching? Because you're probably going to be dealing with people who are going to be going out networking, whether it's internal networking in C-level suite situations and beyond within a company, or external networking with other companies in the industry, chambers of commerce, so on. What's your approach to help prepare them for that type of battle?
Yeah, I see it as a clear pane of glass. This is something I use a lot in my coaching. So I'm on one side of the pane of glass and you're on the other side, and the things that you say, they're not going to touch me if I'm on the other side of the glass, but I can see what's coming my way, right? So I don't have to engage in like a battle in any way at all, actually. I can see with curiosity something that's coming my way. So if I just had a conversation this morning with a group of women where someone was told they were a dominant personality, and it could have been a compliment, but it wasn't actually a compliment, and the strategy was, ask what that meant. Oh, thanks. What do you mean by that? And just be curious. And if the person doesn't want to engage, then that's okay. It's just data. You just know who is going to be somebody who can be in your community and who you want to partner with and who maybe just isn't there yet. But I don't think it's a really good use of our time to get really mad and expend our emotional energy where it's not helpful.
Yeah. I always wondered what could we do in as far as education on the other side of the aisle there with men, and to where people might not become so defensive or they feel like they're getting accused of something, where we could just start at ground zero and say, look, we don't care what's happened in the past. When you talk like this or you act like this, this is how it could be taken, and so on. I'm just using that as an example, but on the flip side.
Yeah, I think we need to have more conversations like that because I said gender is everybody. And so when I think about people putting, women and girls in a box, it's not the only box, Raghu. There's a box for men and boys, too. There's a box for other people who might not fit into those other boxes to push them into those boxes, So there are expectations of you that don't fit either.
Yeah. Yeah.
It includes all of us.
Totally.
I'm just talking about women. But there are a whole lot of people out there talking about men, too, and we need to have more of those conversations.
But I think the mindsets that you're talking about, the education that you're talking about, can be applied to into any aspect. So you're talking about it could be applied to men and so on. And so I think it's really the mindset that you're working on with people and educating people and confidence of being comfortable, positioning themselves in the right spaces and to take the right control of their actions beforehand. And so that's really the key. So I know that's what you focus on, and one of the things that you focus on with leadership. But as far as your clients, who are good prospects for you? Just people who would you like as a client?
Yeah, people ask me this, and I say oftentimes mid-career women. And there's a really specific reason for that because they're really smashed in between like a sandwich a lot of times with like family and parents and these other responsibilities. And yet they have these track records of success and they still feel the fear about up-leveling, And so I think they're just in this sweet spot where I can talk with them and say, you've accomplished so much. What's next? What else do you want? Because a lot of times they think there isn't anything else because they've reached as far as they're like allowed to go in the system. And I think there's more. There's a lot more for them. And I also want to work with people who believe in social impact. So it doesn't have to be necessarily in a particular field. It's about the kind of impact that they want to make. So they are leaders. They are at least mid-career and over.
Yeah. What about power partners? We always talk about everybody knows who, but would be a good client for them. But not everyone knows who a good power partner, meaning who are other professions that might deal with those types of people could refer you those types of people.
Yeah. I know you and I talked about that. I'm like, I have to make sure I know what's a power partner again because you're always talking to me about it, and I'm always trying to learn. And for some reason, it feels like a steep learning curve for me. I don't know why, Raghu. Like, figure me out for me, please, because I struggle sometimes with it. But I do think there are other coaches that are really good power partners for me. I think there are people in positions like within HR or even in the corporate space where they already have like women's leadership opportunities available where they want then one-on-one coaching or they want some kind of like workshops and consulting in groups, things like that. I mean, I would love to work with women in politics.
Yeah, wow.
I really want to work with women in politics.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's my not so secret goal anymore is I want to be the coach to women in Congress.
That's pretty solid. So if anybody has any contacts to women in Congress, those types of people would be a good power partner for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Nice. For you, what is the best, if say somebody wants to contact you for coaching, and where do they start? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So I think they should just go to my website, michellemorkert.com, because you can sign up for my newsletter there, and it's free. Comes out every Sunday. You can sign up for a free call with me just to learn what coaching's about, and I'll even give you some coaching because I believe in just like helping people out, And if you're not interested, you're not interested. That's okay, but come and find out. See what it's all about. And then my blog is on there. There's more information about me on there, and I do sometimes feature other local organizations that I like to support on my website too.
That's awesome. And I'm looking forward to, we have a big announcement to make later this month, but
we do.
We're collaborating a little more. We've done some DEI stuff together, but we're going to be doing some other stuff that we can do, but we'll announce it later. Stay tuned on that. And as always, if anybody is interested in Always Be Connecting coaching, You can always reach me at alwaysbeconnecting.net, or you can reach out to me by email at raghu@alwaysbeconnecting.net. And with that, I would love to really thank you for coming on the show. I've learned so much from you about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, as well as leadership. And so I know I've been taking some of your coaching, and
You've
you've
been
helped
coaching
me.
I want to say that for the record. He's coaching me too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's about helping each other. And so I can't wait to get your Trailblazer shirt. I can't wait. As soon as they come out, and Blink Tees, you're getting from Blink Tees.
Yes.
They're going to be right here at getting delivered here.
I can't wait.
And it'll be awesome, and I can't wait to wear it. So
Yeah.
until next time, thank you, Dr. Michelle.
Thank you.
Until next time, it's been great hanging out with you guys, and we'll see you at the next Real Talk with Raghu.